Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to a special edition of APTN National News. The Northwest Territories government is facing a homeless crisis. For the second year in a row, they've declared a local state of emergency and opened a temporary day shelter in downtown Yellowknife. There is a new site for a shelter, but frontline workers say changes are needed for long-term success. Our Charlotte Mort-Jacobs has that story.
Welcome to Yellowknife, where homelessness meets Band-Aid solutions. The city of just under 20,000 people has one day shelter. But because of demand, they have been relying on temporary day shelters for years and will continue to do so until 2024, when a permanent wellness and recovery center is built. The only shelter in Yellowknife is always full, which means a second temporary shelter is needed before winter. This fall, the territorial government asked City Council permission to use this building as a temporary day shelter, but City Councilors voted against. For the second year in a row, the territorial government has declared a local state of emergency to be able to build a temporary day shelter. This week, the N.W.T announced plans to bring in modular buildings to this location behind me to serve as a temporary drop-in. They say it will be able to accommodate up to 50 people, including staff. So what do frontline workers think of all of this? APTN asked. On the other end of town, the Arctic Indigenous Wellness Camp has been healing trauma since 2018.
I put her the first week of November because...
Staffed with those informed by lived experience, like Patricia Ross.
The homeless people keep me coming back because to me they matter, and not too long ago I was in the same situation as they are.
This is typical for camp. Clients drop in and access mental health and addiction supports. William GREENLAND, a traditional counselor at the wellness camp, says a new temporary shelter keeps things at status quo.
What do we need to do for our people? I mean, geez, you know, there's so many homeless people. We're never going to end that. We could set up places for them, but it's up to the individual to get off the street, to make the change in their life in order to get better. They need to do that themselves.
GREENLAND hopes Indigenous models of healing will be incorporated.
If we can take some of my staff and clone them and put them over in this new center they're going to create, maybe they might begin to feel better. That way somebody is actually listening to them rather than saying, no, you can't come in here, Joe, you've been here already today. We need to let somebody else in today. You know, just come in, you know, and maybe they want to take care of something. We don't know what's going on for Joe today. We want to say, what's happening, Joe? You know, what brings you back here again today? What do you know, how are you feeling?
Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
And while the latest COVID-19 outbreak in the Northwest Territories is affecting multiple regions, again, Yellowknife is experiencing homelessness and people who are homeless who are battling the virus with much needed supports cut off. Our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs brings us the latest in this story.
These shelters and these services are actually like a safety net for the majority of the people on the streets, and they rely on it.
The latest victim in the Northwest Territories COVID-19 outbreak, the street involved of Yellowknife, who come here for a meal, a shower, or simply for shelter. The day shelter and sobering center are now closed indefinitely after many healthcare workers, shelter staff, and clients contracted the virus.
See how angry he is? He's mad, like he wants in, like, where's he gonna go? Look, he's just walking away. You know what I mean?
Michael Fatt, a frontline worker and advocate, says the fallout for clients, broken trust.
Can we rely on these services? Will they always be there? And it's like, when this happens, it just basically breaks that trust with them.
The Reese says COVID-19 spread quickly through the shelter.
They were carrying a backpack on their back, hiding booze in there, and then they were just running to the washroom and sharing their drinks with the next person they want to drink with.
The territorial government says they're in talks with the city to open an emergency day shelter in an arena.
I have taken note of the criticism. I know people say, why weren't we better prepared? I feel like we were prepared, but what we hadn't factored in was, or what the Disabilities Council as the operator hadn't factored in, is that all the staff could be sick at once and we would need a whole replacement.
Minister Julie Green says the GNWT is accommodating those who need a place to isolate in a nearby hotel.
We seem to be managing okay in the isolation center now. We realize that, you know, it's tenuous. If we have a big increase in cases where we run out of space at the isolation center, then we're going to be looking for more space for temporary accommodation.
But even before the outbreak, clients were turned away from the shelter because of limited capacity due to COVID-19 restrictions. On Monday, the GNWT announced they'd selected this location as a new temporary day shelter this winter and are beginning consultations with neighboring businesses. For FAT, he says there's room for more input from frontline staff.
These places, like, they should have a built-in program, a system for each and every individual. They should have identify the challenges, identify the problems, and then step them up. Not just say, okay, fill out this paperwork. Never mind. Fill the paperwork out for them.
Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
To the Yukon now, where advocacy organizations also say there needs to be more affordable housing so vulnerable people don't fall through the cracks. Sarah Connors has the details.
It's a hard life not having a home. Not like home is where the heart is, and I don't have. I feel like sometimes I don't know what to say.
Phyllis, who didn't want to share her last name, is from Cambridge Bay, Nunavut. She's been homeless for 3 years. While income support pays for her to stay in a hotel, it's not the life she pictured for herself.
A lot of friends don't know that I go through this because I'm ashamed sometimes.
Phyllis would like to prepare her own meals, but there's no kitchen space in her modest hotel room, not even a microwave.
I've had to eat out of a can, cold things.
Phyllis wants a place of her own in Whitehorse, but with the average apartment costing around $1,400 a month, she can't afford it as someone on income support.
They just don't look at you anymore. They're just like, oh, okay, well, we'll call you back, and they never do.
Housing here in Whitehorse is hard to come by. According to the Yukon Anti-Poverty Coalition, in the last 10 years, the population has increased by a quarter, but the availability of housing has not. The rental vacancy rate in April 2021 was only 1.7%, and prices are going up. Kate Meechan is the executive director of Safe at Home, which aims to improve housing for low-income and vulnerable Yukoners. She says homelessness is a growing issue.
100% across the board. There's not a single person that doesn't call us who doesn't have an affordability issue.
In August, Safe at Home released a report which found that on April 13th and 14th of this year, at least 151 people in Whitehorse were homeless. 52% of respondents were homeless for the entire past 12 months. It also found 85% of respondents were Indigenous.
So that's a pretty overwhelming number, and it's actually up from 2018. So we're not moving the needle on First Nations experiences of homelessness here. Hotels right now, for example.
Meechan says it could actually be fairly simple to solve homelessness if there were more supports and unique partnerships available, and if decision makers were more willing to assert more measures to get housing built.
And yeah, there'll be a front-end cost to all of that, but you know, it will pay off in the long term in terms of alleviating pressure on other systems.
Some strides are being made. The federal government is investing millions of dollars in housing in the Yukon, and Whitehorse City Council recently voted in support of converting this hotel into 55 units of supportive housing. Phyllis says she hopes to be approved for housing there someday, But for now, this is her reality.
Whitehorse is a really good place to live. There's so many kind people all over, but yet it's so hard to find a home.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Well, the need for affordable housing continues to play out in cities across Canada. After the break, we'll look at the situation near Edmonton. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special edition of APTN National News, where we're looking at the affordable housing crisis. The city of Wetaskiwin, south of Edmonton, closed a homeless shelter, one that had only been open for 9 months. Now those evicted are camping in tents across the city, and they're wondering where they will sleep with winter approaching. APTN's Chris Stewart has more.
The Hub in Wetaskiwin opened in November of last year. It housed 60 people each night and provided services to hundreds more. In May, the city of Wetaskiwin pulled the lease on the city-owned building. The city said complaints from businesses and residents about increased crime caused the decision. Tyler GANDAM is the mayor of Wetaskiwin.
As time went on, we were seeing a big increase in the number of people downtown. Then there became an issue when people were being accosted. There was assaults happening downtown, open drug use, open alcohol use.
When the shelter closed on August 9th, many had nowhere to go. Some arrived on the doorstep of the Rock Soup Greenhouse and Food Bank. Craig Halverson is the executive director.
If we close the shelter, where are people going to go? If we close the shelter, how are people going to eat? And these questions just kept going unanswered by the powers that be. And so on August 9th, when the shelter closed, 22 people showed up on our doorstep here at the Rock Soup Greenhouse and Food Bank because they knew we wouldn't turn them away.
They had to set up quickly. Rock Soup is providing food, clothes washing, and paying for showers at the nearby pool.
We're volunteer run, so me and about 7 volunteers put together camp for 22 in 2 hours. They came with no tents, no blankets, no nothing. We put the call out to our community on social media, and people rallied. And so we were able to shelter, feed, and clothe 22 people on night 1.
V. Duncan is a mental health and homeless advocate. He's working with the Rock Soup to help those in Wetaskiwin who need it. He says the city doesn't have a plan for the winter to help the people staying here and the other encampments in the city.
They want to move everyone over behind this empty lot behind Walmart, and it's kind of ridiculous because they aren't offering any amenities, washrooms, food support.
Both Duncan and Halverson say the reports of crime are overblown.
Because they're saying that it's bringing more crime to the neighborhood, but I don't see that really happening. A lot of these people are pretty respectful to the area. And a lot of it's just blatant racism from City of Wetaskiwin members. A lot of them drive up and they'll yell at the campers, go back to the reserve, you know, dirty Indians, you don't belong here.
I think more it's about the perception of the people than the actual people. And I've seen that here firsthand. We're seeing overt racism here in Wetaskiwin. Unlike I've ever seen in my career. I worked in children's services for a long time. I've never seen racism at this level.
Inspector Durrance of the Wetaskiwin RCMP spoke to APTN. He said crime so far this year is actually down. There were some increases of assaults and use of chemicals. And break-and-enters and car thefts are down.
Look, this is all we got left is that right there. Yeah, that's 3 more logs for the night. How are we going to deal with that?
Tom has been living in the teepee outside the Rock Soup. Tom is not his real name. He says local residents shine headlights at the tents at night to disturb their sleep.
They drive by on their vehicles and rev them up, the heavy, with the loud pipes, they're heavy trucks, yeah. Just then they beep the horn 4 in the morning by here real long, just to be ignorant, right?
To keep you awake?
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
Tom is asking for donations of wood, socks, and winter clothing. The firewood is nearly gone.
This thing doesn't burn like a vehicle. You need fuel to run it, right? Same with this. It needs wood to run. Without this wood, it's going to get cold in there.
Mayor GANDAM says the site behind the Walmart will provide washrooms, garbage disposal, and a fire pit. The location has been used in the past. He says the city is working towards a permanent solution.
Not everything has gone smoothly. We haven't gotten it right every time, but we learn from our mistakes, and we're going to continue to do that and continue to make that effort.
Are you confident that there will be a solution and a place for these people to stay before the winter?
I am confident, yeah.
Tom is grateful for the help of the Rock Soup, but their resources are limited.
Yeah, people are just trying to live here and survive. Look, we're starving. Soup Rock can only support so much, right? And they're bending their backs just to keep these guys fed every day and draining their accounts just to makes people happy, you know. Nobody else out there is pulling for us, just them. But, you know, if you have a heart, come here and support us.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Wetaskiwin, Alberta.
Well, Chris Stewart has continued to follow the situation in Wetaskiwin, and as he reports here, it keeps going from bad to worse.
In August, when the city shut down an indoor shelter after being open for 9 months, Mayor Tyler GANDAM said the reason for the closing was that crime was up, even though the RCMP told APTN crime was actually down. Many moved to a property beside the Rock Soup Greenhouse and Food Bank. They were evicted after 3 weeks by the city and moved behind a Walmart on city property. The mayor told APTN he expected a permanent solution before the winter. It's now November. Temperatures are falling. Living in tents with no running water or power. The mood now at the camp is dark.
As you can see from camp today, like, people are feeling it. Domestic violence has gone up, use has gone up. The mood here, you know, it's a far cry from where it was a couple weeks ago, and definitely from where it was when it was at Rock Soup. People are fighting right now. It's tough.
The Camrose Open Door Association was providing medical support and food over a fence as bylaws prevented them from going on the property. But now Family and Community Support Services has stopped funding even those basic services. Camrose Open Door Association CEO Jessica Hutton can't understand that decision.
We have been ones that have been, you know, working to get food out there and coordinating some of that stuff. And I'm sure that maybe other people can step in. I'm not entirely sure. There's been some volunteers that have tried to, but short of that, there's no agency, as far as I'm aware, that's going to be stepping in to take over what's going on.
She told APTN that there are people here who desperately need their help, from naloxone shots to prevent overdoses to patching a wound, and she is worried for their safety.
There has been lives that have been impacted, people who have gotten sick when they shouldn't have gotten sick, and there's been people that have passed.
Doreen Crane needed help while APTN arrived at the site. An ambulance had just finished helping her. She had a seizure. Doreen told APTN that the people here are angry with the decision to prevent the open door from helping.
It is on a warpath because front door is getting shut down, government shut this place down. It's going to be worse.
So the open door can't help anymore.
They want to.
In an email, Wetaskiwin Mayor Tyler GANDAM told APTN that funding was stopped by Family and Community Support Services because the funding was for the shelter in the civic building. Once the shelter closed, the funding was stopped. He also stated the city is working with the provincial government and Alberta Health Services to get warming shelters in place. Meanwhile, the people here now have less help than they did before. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Wetaskiwin, Alberta.
Well, nowhere is the housing issue more front and center than the downtown east side of Vancouver. Coming up after the break, we'll tell you about a new program there trying to help out. Welcome back. A grassroots lunch program is helping feed people on Vancouver's downtown east side. As APTN's Tina House explains, it's all about giving back.
It's a busy Tuesday night as volunteers prep lunches for their weekly giveaway. And every Wednesday, they gather near the infamous intersection of Main and Hastings, an area of the city where drugs and crime is rampant. The founder, James Harry, starts off with a prayer.
We hope that people that receive feel the love that's gone into this, and hopefully that kickstarts the healing journey. We thank you for all our volunteers and what they do for the downtown east side.
And it's finally time for the volunteers to disperse in all directions for the giveaway.
You two could take this. So this building, access building, go straight up.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody gets one each.
One each?
Yeah.
Thank you, brother man. I appreciate that. You guys are doing an awesome job. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you. Be safe, guys. Be safe, guys.
APTN, man.
For James, a former addict himself, he now devotes his life to helping others get sober. He's no strangers to these back alleys.
Just started off with like 12 lunches, the wife and I, during the pandemic, started the pandemic, and we made 12 canned salmon sandwiches. Brought some bananas and some juice, handed them out. The word got out. Next thing you know, people are wanting to, families are bored at home, so they're baking bread, banana bread, making sandwiches. We got one of our youth donating their own money to buy snacks for us.
Charlie Morrison attended the former residential school in Port Alberni, BC. He's really proud to be here and to help others.
Even helping James out, it's a big thing for me, because I've been sober 37 years now, and that's a big plus for me, especially for being a survivor, because I could have been in the streets like the people I was just helping. I could have been me there, but it's really emotional.
Ernest Edgar Jr. and Donovan Bolton look forward to the weekly lunches.
I love it because I'm a person that likes to eat a lot. A lot of us down here are hurting, but because there's so much help down here, I used to do drugs and now I'm stopping now. I'm sobering up, and because of these guys, it's a lot of help.
This is just a little bit of love to carry on their day, know that they're not forgotten.
And what started with just 12 lunches has now bloomed into 280 lunches every Wednesday, and corporate donations are pouring in. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Thanks, Tina. That's all the time we have for this special edition of APTN National News. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.